There's a special kind of rage reserved for the message that says, "Hey, can we jump on a quick call to discuss your invoice?" After that same client just posted about their record-breaking launch that you built. If you've ever watched a client brag about the results of your work while forgetting to pay you, this letter is for you. Today's story is from Kara, a 47-year-old ex-corporate professional who left her job to run her own small consultancy. Her work took one client from barely covering payroll to over $200,000 in new revenue in a single campaign. When the money hit their account, they didn't celebrate her. They ghosted her invoice. She didn't scream on social media. She pulled the contract, opened a new folder, and started doing what she'd done for bosses and clients her entire career. She documented everything. One, the corporate escape and the dream client. There's a fantasy people have about leaving corporate life. You walk out with a box of plants and framed photos, the elevator doors close behind you, and suddenly you're free working in cafes, taking Fridays off, choosing only clients who align with your values. In reality, you're mostly choosing whoever will pay your rent. I'm Kara. I'm 47, and I spent 20 years in corporate marketing. I was good at it. Good enough to climb from copywriter to director. Good enough to sit in rooms where big budget numbers were tossed around like poker chips. Good enough to write the email campaigns that made executives look smart. I was also tired. Tired of 8 p.m. quick requests. Tired of watching mediocre managers take credit for work I had stayed late to fix. Tired of knowing that no matter how much revenue my team generated, someone 3 pay grades above me would get the actual reward. The breaking point came in a quarterly review meeting. We were looking at the results of a campaign I'd pushed for an overhaul of our onboarding sequence. I'd spent weeks on it, rewriting the copy, rebuilding the flow, testing it against the old one. The numbers were beautiful. Higher open rates, higher click-through, a significant bump in first-month revenue. My VP smiled and said, "See, this is why we invested in that new automation tool." The tool, not the person who'd fought to use it properly. I remember looking at the slide deck and thinking, if I can do this for them, I can do this for myself. 6 months later, after careful saving and a lot of spreadsheets, I turned in my resignation. I wasn't reckless. I had 6 months of expenses in a separate account, a bare-bones budget, and a plan. I'd offer launch and email strategy as a one-woman consultancy for small online businesses that couldn't afford full-time staff but wanted professional results. The first year was humbling. I undercharged. I over-delivered. I said yes to projects I shouldn't have, just to prove I was capable. Still, the work trickled in. A coach here, an e-commerce brand there. A local gym wanting a membership drive email, a non-profit needing donor communications. Then came Evan. He slid into my inbox with a subject line that said, "Help, we're growing faster than we can handle." His email was full of flattery and panic. He ran a small but fast-growing online course business. They'd gone from a few thousand a month to low 6 figures a year, mostly off the back of his personality and a scrappy social media presence. "We're at the ceiling of what my DIY brain can handle," he wrote. "I know we're leaving money on the table, I need someone who actually knows what they're doing with email and funnels. Everyone keeps recommending you. He'd been referred by a past client who paid on time and sent me Christmas cookies every year. That counted for a lot. We hopped on a discovery call. Evan was charming in that founder way, talked fast, big ideas, self-deprecating jokes about being bad with details. "We're a small team," he said. "Just me, my ops person Tessa, and a few contractors. We treat everyone like family. I don't want some agency that nickel and dimes us." He said family 3 times in that call. I should have paid more attention. We talked scope. He wanted full audit of his existing email list and automation's new launch sequence for an upcoming flagship course, cleanup of his checkout flow, and upsell emails messaging help for his webinar. I asked about budget. He named a number that made me sit up. It wasn't agency money, but for a solo consultant doing all the strategy and most of the copy, it was significant enough to cover 2, maybe 3 months of my living expenses. "I'm not looking for cheap," he said. "I'm looking for effective. If we do this right, we'll more than make it back." For once, a client understood that value wasn't measured in hours, but outcomes. We agreed on a project fee, broken into 3 payments, 40% upfront, 30% at delivery of all pre-launch assets, 30% within 14 days after launch wrap-up. I sent over my contract. It spelled out scope of work, deliverables, timeline, payment schedule, late fee clause, 1.5% per month on overdue amounts. A line that said, work may pause if payment is more than 10 days late. He signed within the hour. "Looks solid," he wrote. "We're not going to have a problem. Like I said, we're family here." The upfront deposit hit my account the next day. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like safety. This project could stabilize my quarter. This project could be my proof of concept case study. I treated it that way. I cleared my schedule. I created a folder on my computer, Evan Launch. I did what I've always done best. I got to work. 2, turning their mess into $200. Every client thinks their tech stack is a little messy. Almost none of them are prepared for what happens when someone actually opens the hood. Evan's email system was like a closet you've been shoving things into for years and hoping the door will still close. He had 4 different lead magnets feeding into the same list with no tags. 2 abandoned cart sequences, both half finished. A welcome email that referenced a Black Friday sale from 3 years ago. A launch sequence he'd Frankensteined from a guru's template, complete with jokes that didn't match his voice. "I know it's bad," he said on our first working call, embarrassed. "We just never had time to fix it." "You had time," I said gently. "You didn't have a system. That's what I was there for." I started with an audit. I pulled deliverability reports. I mapped out his current automations. I exported his subscriber list and segmented it by engagement and purchase history. Then I built the plan. We would clean the list, removing obvious dead weight. Rebuild the welcome sequence to actually reflect who he was and what he sold. Create a warm-up campaign to wake up the list before the flagship launch. Write a full launch sequence, pre-launch value emails, open cart, urgency windows, and post-cart follow-up. Fix his checkout page copy and upsell offers to make them clear and compelling. On our next call, I walked him and Tessa through the strategy. "This is why we hired you," Tessa said. "We've been writing from our gut. This feels intentional." We set dates. I wrote, "I've always loved the part of my job where words become levers. A subject line opens a door. A sentence reframes a belief. A story turns maybe later into this is the moment." I built the sequences like I'd done 100 times in corporate, except now, the person who would get credit if it worked was technically me. We tested. We cawed. We scheduled the warm-up sequence. It went out. Open rates ticked up immediately. People replied actual humans, not bots, saying things like, "This is exactly what I've been struggling with, and I didn't realize you offered this." Evan sent me voice notes at odd hours. "This is insane," he said. "I've never seen this much engagement. Where have you been all my life?" I archived those messages, partly because they made me smile, partly because I've learned that people's memories get very short when invoices come due. Launch week arrived. We had everything ready: webinar emails, replay reminders, cart open and cart close sequences, a simple downsell offer for people who couldn't afford the flagship. On the morning of cart open, I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee and more nerves than I would ever admit to a client. I watched the numbers in his dashboard update in real time. First sale, second, 50th. He texted me a screenshot when they passed $50,000. "You are a wizard," he wrote. By the end of day 3, they'd crossed $120,000. By cart close, total gross revenue was just over $200,000. For a business that had been making that in an entire year, it was transformative. Record-breaking, he called it in the Instagram post, where he stood in front of his laptop with his arms spread wide and the revenue dashboard behind him. He tagged me. "Major shout out too at Cara Launch for dialing in our email and funnel," he wrote. "Couldn't have done it without her." I took a screenshot. I congratulated him. I sent a wrap-up email summarizing results, list engagement, conversion rates, gross revenue, upsell performance, recommendations for next time. At the end, I attached my final invoice for the remaining 30% of the project fee. "Per our contract," I wrote, "final payment is due within 14 days of this email. It's been a pleasure working with you." He responded almost immediately. "Absolutely. You've been a dream partner. We'll get this taken care of ASAP." I exhaled. If the story ended there, it would be boring. It didn't. 3, the first will pay you next week. Lie, the first missed payment doesn't feel like a betrayal. It feels like a miscommunication. Day 14 came and went. No payment. No automated "you've been paid" email from my accounting software. No ping from my bank app. I told myself they're busy. Launch day brief, new students, logistics. It happens. On day 15, I sent a polite reminder. "Hey Evan, hope you're getting some rest after launch. Just a quick check-in. It looks like the final invoice hasn't come through yet. Can you confirm the payment is in process?" He replied within the hour. "Ah, thanks for the nudge. Our bookkeeper is out sick, and we're switching over to a new banking platform. It's been a mess. Can we get this to you by end of next week?" I had a late fee clause in my contract. I also had empathy. "Thanks for the update," I wrote. "Let me know if you run into any issues. As a reminder, per our agreement, a 1.5% monthly late fee applies after 10 days past due. If you can have it sent by new date, I'll waive any additional late fees." He sent a thumbs up emoji. I let it go. End of next week came. Nothing. Another reminder. This time, no immediate reply. A day passed. Then another. Finally, a message. Hey, sorry. This week has been wild. Our payment processor held some of the funds because of the sudden spike in sales. They're paranoid about fraud. We're trying to get everything sorted. That was plausible. Payment processors do hold funds sometimes when businesses have sudden spikes. Understood, I said. Keep me posted. In the meantime, I'll add the contractually agreed late fee to the invoice. New total is amount. Silence. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern continued. I'd send a polite, documented reminder. He'd respond with a new excuse. Processor issues, tax planning, waiting on my accountant. We're cash flow tight because we're reinvesting right away. On his public channels, there were no signs of cash flow tightness. He posted screenshots of Stripe dashboards. He posted about hiring. He posted photos of a vacation he and his partner took to celebrate the biggest launch we've ever had. I took more screenshots. I listened back to his early voice notes where he'd called me a dream partner and absolutely worth every penny. And I thought about something I'd read in a freelancer forum. Most non-payments aren't about inability. They're about priorities. He could pay me. He was choosing not to. By week 6, my reminders were less chatty. Hi, Evan, I wrote. As of today, invoice 14 remains unpaid. Total due with late fees per our contract is amount. If payment isn't received by date, I'll need to pause all work and begin formal collection steps. Please confirm. His reply was different this time. Less apologetic, more defensive. Hey, Kara, he wrote. We've been looking at the numbers, and while the launch went well, our net profit isn't as high as we expected once we factor in ad spend, team costs, etc. We're not sure the original fee still makes sense. Can we revisit the amount? Something in me went very still. He wasn't saying he couldn't pay. He was trying to renegotiate after the fact. After he'd seen the results. After I'd already delivered everything according to scope. I read the message 3 times. Then I opened our contract. Paragraph 3, payment terms. Paragraph 4, scope of work. Paragraph 7, late fees. Paragraph 9, no modification of this agreement shall be valid unless in writing and signed by both parties. I drafted my reply in a document first, so I wouldn't write with my adrenaline. Hi, Evan, I typed. Thanks for your note. I understand that net profit feels different from gross revenue, and that you're balancing many expenses. That said, our agreement was for a fixed project fee, not contingent on profit. The full scope was delivered, and you've publicly shared the launch as a success, exceeding your revenue goals. We can certainly discuss future projects with different structures, but this invoice reflects work already completed under a signed contract. The amount is not negotiable. Please confirm payment by date to avoid further steps. I sat with it for a moment. Then I hit send. He didn't respond that day. He did, however, post another revenue screenshot on Instagram with a caption about mindset and investing in yourself. I started a new folder on my computer. I named it Evan Non-Payment. Inside, I saved the signed contract, every invoice, every email and message about payment, screenshots of his praise during the project, screenshots of his public posts about the successful launch. I didn't know exactly what my next move would be, but I knew this: if I let this slide, I wasn't just losing one invoice. I was telling myself and every future client that my work, even when it made them $200,000, could be bargained down after the fact. I've spent my whole career making other people's numbers look good. This time, I was going to make sure my own added up. 4. Contracts, late fees, and escalation. There's a point in every bad client story where you realize the problem isn't confusion. It's entitlement. For me, that point was Evan's "we're not sure the fee still makes sense" message. He wasn't asking for clarification. He was telling me that, after seeing exactly how much money my work made him, he felt entitled to rewrite the deal. I didn't trust myself to respond off the cuff, so I did what I always tell other freelancers to do when money goes sideways. I got another set of eyes on the paperwork. My friend Maya is an attorney who works with small businesses and creatives. We met when I rewrote her firm's website. She told me then, "If you ever have a contract question, call me before you call your bank." I forwarded her the signed agreement, the invoice and due dates, Evan's praise messages during the project, the "we're not sure the fee makes sense" email. We hopped on a call. She didn't sugarcoat it. "He's stalling and testing your boundaries," she said. "You delivered. He used the work. He profited. Now he's trying to renegotiate after the fact. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a tactic." She pointed to clauses in the contract. "Payment terms are clear," she said. "You also have a late fee clause and a line about work pausing when payment is late. That gives you leverage. The next step is a formal demand letter." I'd read about them in articles on handling non-paying clients, how sometimes a demand letter on letterhead is the wake-up call that gentle reminders aren't. Maya drafted one. It was only a page and a half, but it carried more weight than a dozen emails. It summarized the scope of work delivered, the agreed fee and schedule, the original due date and days now past due, the late fee accrual, a firm deadline for payment, 10 business days, the next steps if payment wasn't received, collections, small claims, or further legal action. At the end, it said, "Unless payment in full is received by date, my client is prepared to pursue all available remedies to recover the debt." No drama, just facts. We sent it by email and certified mail. Evan responded within hours. His tone was indignant. "I thought we had a better relationship than this," he wrote, "bringing in lawyers over one invoice. After everything I've paid you already, this feels hostile." It's another common tactic articles warn about: flipping the script so the person asking to be paid becomes the aggressor. I read his message twice and replied once. "Evan," I wrote, "we have a professional relationship governed by a written contract. You agreed to the fee and praised the work when it served you. The only thing that has changed is that payment is overdue. Enforcing an agreement is not hostility. It's standard business practice. The deadline in the letter still stands. He did not reply. Deadline came and went. No payment. No payment plan proposal. No partial transfer. Nothing. So I followed the sequence that every what to do when a client won't pay guide lays out in some form. 1, gentle reminders. I'd already done that multiple times. 2, formal demand letter. Done. Ignored. 3, escalation. For the amount involved, it wasn't pocket change. I had options. Hand the debt to a collection agency. File in small claims if it fit the limit, or regular civil court if not. Consider lien other options depending on jurisdiction. I decided on 2 tracks, legal and reputational. Not revenge, accountability. Legally, Maya filed in the appropriate court for breach of contract to obtain a judgment on the unpaid invoice plus fees. Reputationally, I did something subtler. I stopped protecting his image. Freelancers are often told never to badmouth past clients, even privately. But there's a difference between gossip and documented patterns. When another copywriter messaged me on LinkedIn, "Hey, Evan's team reached out to me about doing their next launch. How was he to work with?" I didn't say, "Oh, he's great, pays well," the way I might have in the past to avoid drama. I said, "We had an excellent launch result together. However, he has an outstanding unpaid invoice that is currently in legal collection. I would recommend very clear contracts and strict payment terms." I attached no screenshots. I didn't rant. I just answered the question truthfully. Over the next month, 2 more people reached out with similar questions. He'd been busy shopping for new vendors. Apparently, he assumed my silence was bought by his non-payment. It was. "I wish I'd asked you earlier," one designer wrote back. "They just tried to push me into a huge scope with 10% down." I started to understand something that articles hint at, but don't always say plainly. When you silently absorb a non-payment, it doesn't just hurt you. It clears the runway for them to do it again. I wasn't going to clear it this time. 5. When karma arrives with a logo, court moves slowly. Reputation does not. While the lawsuit crept through its procedural steps, Evan's business kept posting. Revenue screenshots, testimonials, behind the scenes snapshots with his team. Somewhere around month 3 of non-payment, a different kind of message hit my inbox. It was from a woman named Lydia, whose name I recognized as the founder of a large membership community in the same niche. She was, effectively, one of Evan's biggest referrers and partners. "Hey Kara," she wrote. Random question. "We're putting together a preferred provider list for our members, copywriters, strategists, designers. Your name came up in a good way. Also heard a rumor Evan had a payment dispute with you. If you're comfortable sharing, is that something we should be concerned about, or just a one-off miscommunication?" I stared at the screen. This was the crossroads. Ignore it, and I'd be tacitly smoothing over his behavior. Overreact, and I'd risk sounding unprofessional. I chose the middle path, neutral, documented. "Hi Lydia," I replied. "Thanks for reaching out, and congratulations on the provider list. That sounds like a great resource." and I laid it out, our contract. The scope delivered. The successful launch metrics. The unpaid invoice and timeline. The steps taken, reminders, demand letter, pending legal action. I ended with, I don't wish him harm. I am simply not comfortable working with his business again until the debt is resolved. I would advise anyone considering a relationship with him to use very clear contracts and to research accordingly. She thanked me. A week later, Evan posted a long rant on his stories about toxic freelancers who don't understand the realities of entrepreneurship, and vendors who think one project entitles them to lifetime loyalty. I didn't respond publicly, but word trickled back to me through the grapevine. One design agency declined to renew their contract with him after hearing about the non-payment case. A VA agency he'd been courting said they'd pass. Lydia quietly removed him from a slide in her presentation where he'd previously been featured as a case example. Karma didn't show up as a dramatic, instant downfall. It showed up as doors closing. Not my doing, just the natural consequence of other professionals deciding they didn't want to be next in line. Meanwhile, the legal case reached a predictable point. Confronted with a likely judgment and the prospect of having it on record, Evan's lawyer suddenly became very reasonable. They proposed a settlement. Evan would pay the full principal of the invoice. Late fees would be reduced, but not erased. Payment would be made in 2 installments over 60 days. It wasn't perfect, but it was money I had earned, finally moving toward my account. I agreed. The first payment arrived. Then, as if to prove to himself he still had some power, he sent me a message. "Hope we can put this behind us," he wrote. "It's a shame it had to get so messy. If you'd just been more flexible, we could have kept working together." I didn't reply. We weren't working together. We were closing a file, and I was updating my own internal policies. No more 40-30-30 for first-time clients. Higher deposits. Clearer pause clauses. Faster escalation. I'd spent my career making other people's launches work. It was time to treat my own boundaries with the same seriousness. 6 new rules for old patterns the next time a potential client said on a discovery call, "We're like family here. We don't really do contracts." I didn't smile politely. I said, "That won't work for me." When they blinked, surprised, I added, "Contracts protect both of us. They keep expectations clear and avoid misunderstandings. If you're not comfortable signing one, we're probably not a fit." They backed out. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because here's the part most: how to handle non-paying clients. Articles don't talk about enough. The boundary you draw with one bad client protects you from dozens of future ones. After Evan, I changed my onboarding process. Every new project now includes a written agreement with clear scope and revision limits, a payment schedule that front loads risk onto me as little as possible, a clause that says work will pause if any invoice is more than 7 days overdue, and I enforce it, a late fee clause I actually apply, not just keep as decoration. I also built a quiet whisper network in my own head. When colleagues ask about a prospect, I answer honestly. When I bring someone into a project as a subcontractor, I tell them exactly how I handle payment and where they fit in. And I talk openly without naming Evan about what happened, so other freelancers don't feel like they're the only ones. Because the shame of not getting paid thrives in silence. The systems that protect us thrive in shared knowledge. If you're listening to this and seeing your own client in Evan, here's what you need to hear. You are not petty for enforcing your contract. You are not ungrateful when you insist on being paid for work that made someone else money. You are not unprofessional for sending a demand letter or filing in small claims court. You're a business owner. Acting like one is not an overreaction. It's your job. If a client keeps saying, "We'll pay you next week," and weeks turn into months, praises your work publicly while privately claiming it wasn't worth the fee, tries to renegotiate after seeing results, makes you feel like the villain for asking to be paid, start a folder. Call it whatever you like. Non-payment receipts, just in case. Put in your contract, your invoices, your email threads and messages, screenshots of their public praise and results, if it comes to that. Then decide, like a responsible business owner, what your next step is. Gentle reminder, formal notice, payment plan if it's truly needed, or legal escalation if it's not. You don't owe anyone a discount they didn't ask for before the work was done. You don't owe anyone flexibility that only flows one way. And you definitely don't owe anyone your silence about a pattern that might hurt the next person they hire. If you feel safe sharing, tell your story in the comments. Have you had a client refuse to pay after a successful project? Did you chase the money, walk away, or take legal action? What's one clause you wish you'd had in your contract from the beginning? If you're not ready for details, you can just write, "I got my receipts ready. The freelancers who have been there will see you." And maybe the next time a client tries, "We'll pay you when we can," you'll hear a different voice in your head. Not shame, not fear. Just this: you did the work. You deserve to be paid.